In file cabinets, photo albums, and desk drawers, most of us have more photographs of ourselves than we will ever have time to sort through. Even if we did, these pictures wouldn't reveal all we wish we could know. They might remind us that our closest friend in childhood was the family dog. They might help us recall our first athletic exploits. But those flat, two-dimensional images can hardly tell the full story of who we are or how we relate to other people. The communication styles profile presented in this chapter is a sort of 3D camera, one that captures a multi-dimensional snapshot of yourself. It enables you to see yourself as others see you. It reveals your particular style of communicating, and it will help you become a more successful communicator. When people first discover their styles, it's often an epiphany. They turn to each other and say, "So that's why you love details," or, "Now I see why you and I get along so well." People will spend hours talking about the insights they've gained. It's not unusual to see people huddled together, comparing their styles and saying, "If only I had known this when." One organization, a New York magazine publisher, took this response a step further. The president had baseball caps made for everyone, a different color hat for each communication style. We found the place swarming with green, red, yellow, and orange hats. On each hat was inscribed, "It's all a matter of style." Reactions like these are typical. They show the excitement that comes with learning about communication styles. But along with the excitement comes a long list of benefits. You'll learn more about these as we go along. If you want to become a skilled communicator, this chapter is the place to start. Think for a moment about the people with whom you communicate easily and naturally. They are like your second self. You see things the same way they do. You share their thoughts and feelings. You can complete their sentences. Even when you have a dispute, you know they see your side of the story just as you see theirs. Some people, on the other hand, seem to be on a different wavelength. They never see things the same way you do. They don't tackle problems in the same way. Maybe you think there's something wrong with your relationship. Most likely, there's not. More likely, the differences are merely a matter of style. Research shows that people communicate in measurably different ways that reflect differences in what they choose to hear and say. Some people focus on feelings. Some focus on tasks. Some focus on the big picture. Some on the smallest details. These choices determine how we relate to the world. So understanding our style is tantamount to understanding how we see the world around us. In a sense, our world is a reflection of our communication style. Communication styles are a manifestation of our personalities, but they are not the same as personality. Scholars and researchers agree that personality is relatively stable, changing only subtly over time. Our style of communicating, on the other hand, is a learned behavior. We can modify it once we learn how. In fact, skilled communicators can modify their style on the spot, as the situation warrants. Just like reading a book, hitting a baseball, or diving into a pool, modifying your communication style is a skill. It doesn't come naturally, but once you learn it, it's a skill you can use all your life. 3,000 years ago, there was a human just like you and me who lived near a city surrounded by mountains. The human was studying to become a medicine man, to learn the knowledge of his ancestors, but he didn't completely agree with everything he was learning. In his heart, he felt there must be something more. One day, as he slept in a cave, he dreamed that he saw his own body sleeping. He came out of the cave on the night of a new moon. The sky was clear and he could see millions of stars. Then something happened inside of him that transformed his life forever. He looked at his hands, he felt his body, and he heard his own voice say, "I am made of light. I am made of stars." He looked at the stars again, and he realized that it's not the stars that create light, but rather light that creates the stars. "Everything is made of light," he said, "and the space in between isn't empty." And he knew that everything that exists is one living being, and that light is the messenger of life because it is alive and contains all information. Then he realized that although he was made of stars, he was not those stars. "I am in between the stars," he thought. So he called the stars the Tanao, and the light between the stars the Nagual, and he knew that what created the harmony and space between the two is life or intent. Without life, the Tanao and the Nagual could not exist. Life is the force of the Absolute, the Supreme, the Creator who creates everything. This is what he discovered. Everything in existence is a manifestation of the one living being we call God. Everything is God. And he came to the conclusion that human perception is merely light perceiving light. He also saw that matter is a mirror. Everything is a mirror that reflects light and creates images of that light. And the world of illusion, the dream, is just like smoke, which doesn't allow us to see what we really are. The real us is pure love, pure light, he said. This realization changed his life. Once he knew what he really was, he looked around at other humans and the rest of nature, and he was amazed at what he saw. He saw himself in everything, in every human, in every animal, in every tree, in the water, in the rain, in the clouds, in the earth. And he saw that life mixed the Tanao and the Nagual in different ways to create billions of manifestations of life. In those few moments, he comprehended everything. He was very excited and his heart was filled with peace. He could hardly wait to tell his people what he had discovered. But there were no words to explain it. He tried to tell the others, but they could not understand. They could see that he had changed, that something beautiful was radiating from his eyes and his voice. They noticed that he no longer had judgment about anything or anyone. He was no longer like anyone else. Amelia Bedelia adored her bike. It was a great bike. It was fast and dependable, and she had learned to ride on it. She could tell you how it had gotten every dent. She could tell you what had chipped each fragment of paint from the frame and what had made those rusty scratches on the chrome. She could match each insult to her bike to an injury on her body, scabs on her knees, scrapes to her elbows, bruises on her shins, and a tiny sliver of a scar under her chin. Amelia Bedelia had parked her bike at the bike rack. She was about to go into school when she saw some kids buzzing around Suzanne Scroggins. Suzanne was a new girl this year. She told all her friends to call her Susie. Amelia Bedelia still called her Suzanne, even though Amelia Bedelia sat right behind her. Amelia Bedelia had never figured out why Suzanne was so crabby and bossy every day. Every day except for today, of course, since it was the last day of school before vacation. Amelia Bedelia noticed the difference right away. Suzanne was smiling from ear to ear. Then Amelia Bedelia saw why. Suzanne had a new bike. It was the most beautiful bike in the world. Amelia Bedelia was speechless, but she did make a sound. It was the takes your breath away inhaling sound that you can't control when you see something amazing. The bike was painted a rich emerald green with metal flakes that sparkled like diamonds floating just beneath the smooth enamel surface. Gleaming chrome reflected the morning sun, dazzling Amelia Bedelia's eyes. She tried to look away, but she could not take her eyes off the bike. It hurt to look. It hurt more not to look. Every inch of the bike was so streamlined that it looked as though it was still moving, even after Suzanne had parked it. From the back of her throat, Amelia Bedelia managed to croak, "Nice bike." "Thank you," said Suzanne. "But bikes are bikes." "That's true," said Amelia Bedelia. "Just two wheels with spokes." "And a lot of gears," said Suzanne. "I don't have any gears," said Amelia Bedelia. "Two tires, definitely," said Suzanne. "Not really," said Amelia Bedelia. "I don't get too tired without gears." "Brakes?" said Suzanne. "Sometimes my bike breaks," said Amelia Bedelia. "Then my dad fixes it." The bell rang. It was time to go inside. As Suzanne locked her bike at the rack, she said, "Don't forget to lock up your bike, Amelia Bedelia." That's when the truth hit Amelia Bedelia. She had never locked up her bike. She didn't have to, because it wasn't worth stealing. Who would want it after seeing the bike? Amelia Bedelia didn't, that's for sure. Everyone followed Suzanne into school, leaving Amelia Bedelia to ponder the difference between the two bikes. She felt bad for her bike. She felt bad about feeling bad about her bike. She felt bad, period. Finding out that life is unfair was no way to start the day, and it was certainly no way to start school vacation. That afternoon after school, Amelia Bedelia avoided everyone, even her friends. She hid behind the dumpster, listening to the laughter and the jokes and the cries of, "Have a good break!" Finally, Amelia Bedelia got on her bike and rode home. She took the back way so no one would see her. Whoever said it was always darkest before the dawn clearly had never lived like Iris Collins. Sometimes she felt like a cave creature that never saw sunlight. It was dark at sunrise, sunset, and all the hours in between. She stared at her account balance on her phone with anxiety chewing away at her insides, a behavior she mirrored by gnawing on her cuticle until it bled. Her roommates would be home soon, and she didn't look forward to that conversation. They'd covered her for the last 2 months, but she doubted they would be willing to triple down. "I can't even leave until I pay them back, and I can't find a new place either." She had no clue how to earn her back rent or come up with what she needed for this month. Her sisters had money, but Rose would lecture if she bailed Iris out. Lily would refuse to help while talking about how Iris should live within her means, and Olive didn't have reliable internet since she was currently doctoring without borders. Her 3 sisters were a how-to guide for success, while Iris was the cautionary tale. Her mother had made life hell the last time she lent financial assistance, so that was out of the question. Should I sell my car? In the movies, vampires were essentially immortal and had been accruing wealth for centuries. Unfortunately for Iris, she came from a different line entirely. Her type didn't feed on blood, but human emotions, and Iris had come up shy in that department as well. Unlike the rest of her family, she had no special abilities that sprang from her vampiric nature. At least, nothing had ever manifested. Olive could feed on her patients' pain and improve their lives as she did so. Lily feasted on grief, and Rose thrived on anger, whereas Iris was basically human. Or so her mother had said more than once. Her tone made it clear that wasn't a compliment. But then, even among the paranormal community, psychic vampires weren't well liked. They were known as takers for obvious reasons. 5 years ago, when the witches made their big announcement, others had followed suit. Now, Iris didn't have to hide who she was, and there were dating apps devoted to various types of supernatural folk. Iris had been unshifted for a while, but she kept meeting lone wolf types who just wanted to hit and quit. In this case, they happened to be able to turn into actual wolves. Then she tried Binder, but witches could be touchy about lineage, apparently. The skeptics and conspiracy theorists amused her the most. There were forums devoted to debunking magic, calling it the greatest hoax since the moon landing. And sometimes Iris did a deep dive through the most ridiculous suggestions to distract herself from the reality of how screwed she was. In fact, she was doing that now. She scrolled on her phone, snickering. Sure, lizard people have replaced all our nation's leaders. That's real. And there are mole people living underneath Capitol Hill. Enough of that. From there, she clicked through to a site offering various magical charms. I could really use one for prosperity, but they're so expensive. And what if it doesn't work? Shaking her head, she resisted the urge to max out her card with an impulse purchase. But damn, it was tough. She really wanted to find out if the magical lipstick was permanently kiss-proof. In the news, Congress was trying to pass a new law requiring all paranormal individuals to self-identify and register in some kind of national database. Yeah, that won't end well. And some douchebag senator in Iowa wanted even sterner sanctions, special housing projects, and tracking devices. Someone else had proposed a tax on supernaturals. After a fairly shaky start to the day, Arthur's mind was beginning to reassemble itself from the shell-shocked fragments the previous day had left him with. He had found a nutrimatic machine which had provided him with a plastic cup filled with a liquid that was almost, but not quite, entirely unlike tea. The way it functioned was very interesting. When the drink button was pressed, it made an instant but highly detailed examination of the subject's taste buds, a spectroscopic analysis of the subject's metabolism, and then sent tiny experimental signals down the neural pathways to the taste centers of the subject's brain to see what was likely to go down well. However, no one knew quite why it did this because it invariably delivered a cup full of liquid that was almost, but not quite, entirely unlike tea. The Nutrimatic was designed and manufactured by the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation, whose complaints department now covers all the major landmasses of the first 3 planets in the Sirius Tau star system. Arthur drank the liquid and found it reviving. He glanced up at the screens again and watched a few more 100 miles of barren grayness slide past. It suddenly occurred to him to ask a question that had been bothering him. Is it safe? He said. Magrathea's been dead for 5 million years, said Zaphod. Of course it's safe. Even the ghosts will have settled down and raised families by now. At which point, a strange and inexplicable sound thrilled suddenly through the bridge, a noise as of a distant fanfare, a hollow, reedy, insubstantial sound. It preceded a voice that was equally hollow, reedy, and insubstantial. The voice said, "Greetings to you." Someone from the dead planet was talking to them. "Computer!" shouted Zaphod. "Hi there! What the photon is it?" "Oh, just some 5 million-year-old tape that's being broadcast at us." "A what? A recording?" "Shush," said Ford. "It's carrying on." The voice was old, courteous, almost charming, but was underscored with a quiet, unmistakable menace. "This is a recorded announcement," it said, "as I'm afraid we're all out at the moment. The Commercial Council of Magrathea thanks you for your esteemed visit." "A voice from ancient Magrathea!" shouted Zaphod. Okay, said Ford. "But regrets," continued the voice, "that the entire planet is temporarily closed for business. Thank you. If you would care to leave your name and the address of a planet where you can be contacted, kindly speak when you hear the tone." A short buzz followed, then silence. "They want to get rid of us," said Trillian nervously. "What do we do?" "It's just a recording," said Zaphod. "We keep going. Got that, computer?" "I got it," said the computer, and gave the ship an extra kick of speed. They waited. After a second or so came the fanfare once again, and then the voice. "We would like to assure you that as soon as our business is resumed, announcements will be made in all fashionable magazines and color supplements, when our clients will once again be able to select from all that's best in contemporary geography." The menace in the voice took on a sharper edge. "Meanwhile, we thank our clients for their kind interest and would ask them to leave now." Arthur looked round the nervous faces of his companions. "Well, I suppose we'd better be going then, hadn't we?" he suggested. "Shh," said Zaphod. "There's absolutely nothing to be worried about." "Then why is everyone so tense?" "They're just interested," shouted Zaphod. "Computer, start descent into the atmosphere and prepare for landing."